Welcome to the 100X Life podcast, where we activate people who desire to live the words of Jesus and experience the abundant life he promises. I'm your host, Rob Dayton, and I hope this podcast inspires you to put in the work of following Jesus.
Now the Spirit of the Lord is upon me, to bind up the brokenhearted and set the captives free.
Hey, 100X Lifers, welcome back to the podcast. I have an incredible interview with Ron and Cathy Midyett, some of my closest friends on planet Earth. It's so cool to have them on the podcast. But before we get to that interview, I just want to remind you, we are getting close. We are now weeks away from January 2nd, the start of our next 62-day challenge. So you got 3 ways to sign up. They're all in the show notes today. You can sign up as an individual, and I'll be coaching you along the way. You can sign up with one of our 100X Life coaches or become a 100X Life coach. Actually, down in Santa Monica, one of my guys is becoming a 100X Life coach, just emailed me and is signing up people at his church. Third option is actually you could have the entire church do 100X Life. We've got all 3 of those in the link. What's really cool about the church version is that my team will put together a landing page for your church so that you can have the same branding as your church and really make it a way to grow members of the body of Christ where you meet on a Sunday and grow them into following the words of Jesus. That is our heart for 100X Life, is we want to put the words of Jesus into practice. And we hope this podcast inspires you today. Ron and Cathy, here they are. What's going on, guys?
Hey, Rob, good to be with you.
Come on. Hey, so you guys are in SLO or San Luis Obispo at Royal Grande. If you don't know where that is, it's kind of, I think, is it still in Southern California or is it more central?
Well, we like to say Central California.
Central California. Okay. And of course, I'm up in Bend, Oregon today. So you guys have quite the story in terms of, you've both been on the podcast before. You're both involved in the master's program. As people who are familiar with 100X Live as a part of the master's program, Cathy's actually teaching and got her own class. Cathy, why don't you catch us up since last time we heard from you on how that's going? You're teaching the master's program, and tell us about that journey.
Yes, it's been absolutely amazing, and not always knowing where that was going to land, but TMPX, master's program, I'm calling it Master's Program Accelerated. It's the consolidated version, key concepts, key tools from the master's program. Graduated my first group of women in August, which was a phenomenal experience. Super fun to see them go through some transformation. Yeah, just to see the growth. It just was really exciting. And now I'm up in my second group of classes. We are on session 3 of 12 and just really enjoying it. And you can't unwind 100X Life from TMPX. There's just so much crossover, so much interweaving going on. If I tend to talk about TMPX, that's because it's all intertwined.
It's so integrated. And just as a reminder, when we're in the master's program, we're TMPX, we're looking at the 4 calls of God. The first one being saying yes to Jesus. Second one is call to transformation, which is 100X Life, transform the way you think and actually do the behaviors of love. And that's what we're looking for 100X Life. And then a call to faithfulness in your family and the things God's given only you. And then a call to fruitfulness is the top end. So yeah, 100X Life is that call to transformation. I heard you say you were surprised at how much you like TMPX. Tell me about the surprise. What was the thing that made you go, oh, wow, this is actually really cool?
Master's program is, as everyone knows, a fire hose of information. And TMPX is the same way. And it's hard to know. My own experience in master's program was I had to really get to that end point of session 12 where I took the time to look back and see what had happened over the previous, at that point, it was 3 years for master's. And I found the exact same thing happened in TMPX, where I knew the gals were changing, but to have them take a month or 2 and reflect and really look back at their benchmarks and see what they've learned, it's that looking back that allows you to really see the changes that you've made. And so when it all came together in graduation and they're saying, "This is how I changed," and when I wrote my prayer to them and Spirit really came to me and said, "This is how I've seen them change." It was just like this amazing coming together of transformation and growth, and just to be part of that, it's all the Trinity's work and the gals work with the Trinity, but to be able to lead and guide a little bit and equip, what a gift.
Come on, you saw the glory of what you were doing. I think there's two things that I'm taking away from what you're saying that are really important. The first is that discipleship can be challenging, and I kind of read into what you're saying, uncertain. Like, is this going to work? Now you have this track record with many women who are experiencing it, but at first it's like, Is this going to work?" And I know a lot of people who have a heart to grow the kingdom. This is me, and this is you, Cathy, is that we want to grow the people who have said yes. We want to double down on their commitment to follow Jesus in a way that's not just the abundant life for them, but also profound in terms of kingdom growth. And then the second thing that I took away from you that I think is really powerful is that the looking back is sometimes something we miss. We don't do that enough. We don't look at the gain we've actually achieved. There's so much stuff that God has grown us in. But we don't look back. We're just looking at the next thing and distracted by the next thing. And it's really cool how you had your women look back and then reflect. And then did that look like reporting out? Here's what happened.
Yes, in parts it did, but I think it was more the awareness of transformation is what changed. And then they could see moving forward. They could see how that would push them forward, would launch them forward. So,
So good. It's like that song, He's Gonna Do It Again, right? If you know what he's done, he's gonna do it again. I love that.
absolutely.
Okay, Ron, let's go. So you just landed the plane on kind of a career thing, and you're boomeranged back into the CEO role, and now you've landed the plane again. And so where do we find you in life right now?
So I'm gonna just tag on with Kathy because where I am right now, like to use your lexicon, to use the TMP lexicon, I'm kind of in the cocooning phase, and I'm not really looking, to accelerate that or speed that up. And I'm really enjoying the season, quite honestly, of watching and supporting Kathy and what she's doing. And going back to, I would say there's one other, kind of surprise thing. When Kathy first started this, there was a lot of questions of, well, is this right for me? Can I do this? Am I going to be able to really impart in women? So, yeah, I'm going to call it maybe some self doubt. And so it's been really beautiful. She did that commitment thing. What's the first step, right? Commit. And she did the commitment thing and just dove into it and said yes. And I think, all those questions and doubts that she had going in are being answered, really in kind of a positive. And, I've had in my career, I've had so many opportunities in the work world to be able to dive into something like, yeah, I'm way too young to be doing this. And how did I get into this role? I'm not sure I know how to do this. I'm going to, fake it till I make it, or I'm going to figure this thing out on the fly. And it's really kind of fun to see Kathy have a little bit of that now and in this realm, and to be able to support her in that. So yeah, it's been awesome. I'm saying I'll wait till the end of the year and get back in the new year, and we'll figure out what's next for me.
He's in the cocoon. And so, yeah, I think it's great. I love to hear about people who are in the cocoon. Actually, you don't really hear that much. And for our listeners, what that means is the cocoon is a place just kind of what going from caterpillar to the next step, to actually fly. And, there's multiple cocoons in life. It's not just one, as the metaphor suggests, but really reflecting on what has God placed in me? Where am I at in life that I have capacity for, that I can make a commitment? I love how you mentioned commitment first is how we get into the kingdom game, as we commit and we just go for it. And I love that you're just kicking back and watching Kathy, and that's kind of a shift. Kathy Like, because before when Ron's in the CEO Ron and he's off and he's doing stuff and he's really focused on that. And now you got Ron kind of on the sidelines with palm fronds cheering you on. What is that like? Tell me about that.
Well, I mean, how much more fantastic can it be? Honestly. I mean, yeah, it's different, but he's always been a supporter of me. I think whatever I would have wanted to do, he would have been there regardless of what kind of position he's in. So, yeah, it's a wonderful thing to have him around more. We've been past 3 years back and forth through between Monterey and Arroyo Grande, sometimes together, sometimes apart, but always learning that home is where the 2 of us are together. And just having him home and together in Arroyo Grande, it's just been great, and he's an incredible support. He's doing an amazing job of helping me to work through things instead of just fixing things, which, when you're in that CEO role, a lot of times it's easier just to fix. So he's helping me, from a business standpoint, from all different kinds of standpoints. It's really been fantastic.
So cool. And we hang out a lot together with Nancy. And since we know you, I know that you guys are kind of in this place. It's kind of cool. Would you be willing to share about like how things have shifted through your TMP? And you could get into 100x life, but like really with the TMP effort, I think Ron went to TMP. How many years ago was that now?
Boy, I started in 18, finished in 21, and then I went through three-quarters of a second group as a table coach. Then I got
So
hauled away.
amazing. And I remember session 9 for you, really looking at the kind of the heart of the matter, passion, and really understanding, who does God say I am? And you had a pretty profound moment in that really changed your life. What could you share about that to just really understand what happened to you?
Yeah, we're not going into, too much, digging up too many of the old wounds. Just my upbringing and just kind of my life experiences, kind of instilled in me that I'm all alone, and to do anything, I have to, if I want something done, I got to do it myself. I can't count on others. Really, really good in a work world, right? It really, propelled me ahead. Maybe not so great in terms of relationships, with friends, Kathy, with my children. But yeah, I had a moment. I was rocked by the Spirit, by Father God. I was in a very, very, I'm going to say, physical way. I was told I was not alone. That God was with me always, and He's put all these people in my place. Yeah, I came home and told Kathy about this, and she looks me in the eye and says, "You don't know how long I've been waiting to hear you say that," right? So, yeah, it was very powerful, very
Wow,
powerful.
thank you for sharing that. And I want to ask you about that moment, Kathy. But one thing just to pause on is just so cool when we're able to experience that kind of intimacy, with one member of the Trinity or with God, however you see it, and have actually a physical manifestation of his love, which I think happened for you. What would you say was your positioning to receive that? Do you feel like it was just unsuspecting? Did you feel like you were opening yourself up to that? Was it a question you were asking?
Well, to be honest with you, I was thinking about my children and how much I love them. And as soon as I had that mental thought of how much I love my children, boom,
Boom.
light and heat from above, vibrations from within rocked me. And the answer from God, the message from God is, "That's right, Ron. That's how I love you and more."
Wow.
And then there was a lot more of a download. We won't no, don't need necessarily get into it, but I heard it, I felt it. Yeah, it was amazing.
That is so cool. I think I mean, even as I hear it, and I've had experiences as well. I want that again. And I know many of our listeners would really want that. And this is kind of the core of 100x Life. And reading from John 14:21, whoever has my commandments and keeps them, this is Jesus talking, whoever has my commandments and keeps them is the one who loves me. The one who loves me will be loved by my Father, and I too will love them and show myself to them. It's really cool because this is just after Jesus is saying, in a while you won't see me, but then you will see me. No one else will see me, but you'll see me. He's talking to the disciples. And this is kind of a way that we continue to see Jesus. Sounds like for you, Ron, whichever member of the Trinity, can you identify? You said Father, God.
It
Was
was
it?
it was Father.
It was the Father because you relate to your kids. Like we all want that. And so that's a really cool thing to hear how that opened up for you. Maybe so for the listener in Jesus' name.
Yeah, Rob, it's really interesting that you brought up that verse is thinking about next life and what has been, the commands of Jesus and what has been most impactful. That's the verse that has really impacted me the most during the whole
Wow.
X process. And it's one of those things, and I think this is to a lot of Jesus' commands, is that particular verse. I can't tell you how many times I've, read it or perused through it in the Bible. But that whole part of it, those are the people that love me. This qualifier, right? It's not so much to know the command, but you have to do the work. You have to follow the commands, and then you will be demonstrating that you love Jesus. And that was just something, again, I've read it so many times in my life, and it just never, things clicked then. It's like, oh, Cassie and I always say in our relationship that we decide to love each other every morning. So love
Wow.
is not an emotion. Love is a physical, it's a commitment, and then it is an action, right? And so that verse to me kind of said, I mean, we've been saying this for years in our marriage, but I never really took that to, following the commands of Jesus to the day I read that through them. I don't know if this was the first or the second time I went through 100X Live, and it just smacked me. It's like, oh yeah, it's action. It's the action part that I need to be working on.
So good. I love that. And we like to say that Jesus's love language is obedience. And
There you
then
go.
I would point out, we talk about obedience a lot, and I think that can be intimidating. This in the Greek, this when Jesus says, "Whoever has my commands and keeps them," it has the sense of holding them and watching over them. And God, it makes me think of in John 15, where he says, if you abide in me and my words abide in you, mean, your words live inside of you. That kind of connects the dots for me. And whoever has my commands and keeps them, they're actually living inside of me because I'm focused on them. I'm watching over them. I'm guarding them. So cool. Thank you for that. That was so powerful. Cathy, how did you respond to this moment in Ron, kind of this awakening in this? He called you on the phone and he said, "You don't know how long I've been waiting for this." Tell us about that.
It was incredibly powerful because what resulted as he sat in this and as he practiced integrating that into his soul, that he's not alone, it just opened him up to me, to the kids. I just saw him embrace this and reach out, and I don't want to say repair relationships like they were broken, but improve on relationships. And that's where I say I got my husband back. Like, this was the guy I married who was really open and curious, and as opposed to just someone who was driven and, wanting to fix and go and not go through all the detailed interactions. Now he was open to that again, which was super exciting.
So cool. I mean, what a great way to supersize a marriage. I think that that's just true, is that the more we connect with God, the more we can love, more capacity we have to love each other, the more we kind of get what our role is in relationship. God is such a relational God. I remember when I was younger, quoted this quote, I just came out of my mouth: the people are really all there is. And when you have that love connection with God, you just really see how important it is. And it sounds like you guys experienced that. That is so exciting. I'm so glad had to be on the sidelines for that one. Okay, so 100X Life. You guys have both been through this together. Ron's already started talking a little bit about it. Cathy, you're saying that 100X Life is really a part of the master's program process of transformation. And you both have been doing it a while, and to some extent, I think, Cathy, you've been leading it. So how do you feel like this has impacted you? Let's start with individually, and then we'll move to marriage. Cathy, how's this impacted you, this whole process of 100x life?
This has given me a framework to really focus on not only the words of Jesus, which obviously are super impactful, but on getting the mind in the right spot. One of my favorite slides from TMPX is where the spirit is in the heavenly realms, body and soul are in the earthly realms, and mind is the bridge between the heavenly and the earthly realms. Just learning to feed my mind with the spirit, with the words of Jesus, and getting in that mindset where the mind has control over soul and body, that arrow, that all of that trickles downward, and not allowing my body to have control over the mind or to have the earthly realms feeding into my mind. That's the other aspect. But 100x life really takes it to it's the body and the soul relationships that feed, you don't want that to be feeding and leading the mind. So for me, I think that has been the biggest thing is renewing the mind, having a mindset, learning how to create the right mindset and what mindset Jesus wants me to have. That's been a huge impact for me.
It seems like that's the pinnacle of really the importance of Jesus following. I find myself saying lately, Jesus, the mindset God. He's the member of the Trinity that seems to be most concerned about our mindset. He comes on the scene and he says, "Hey, just following the law is not good enough. Actually, I want your entire mind." And you're hinting on that and how the mind is this bridge between heaven and earth. We in our imaginations, that's the place we're most likely going to hear from God, a sense. Some people hear the audible voice, not most. We're going to have a sense in our minds. So leading with our minds, which is interesting because that is the reason why we have a challenge with 2 45-minute workouts, 100 ounces of water, 5 fruits and veggies a day, no alcohol, no added sugar, is because we want to position ourselves to be able to say no and actually exercise no or make our bodies do something it doesn't want to do, where the mind takes control. So you're just emphasizing that. So cool. Now, Ron, you said that for just understanding that Jesus's presence comes with keeping his commands and understanding how you love Jesus. Would you add any more as to why the 100x life was really attracted to you?
Well, I mean, I think there's lots of things. For those of you that, I originally got into it because I was doing the table coach thing at the TMPX, and therefore I was around you and people that know Rob. There's this thing called the Rob Vortex you kind of can get sucked into, right? And so that probably
Oh,
got me going first. Because at that point the program wasn't, you hadn't written the book yet, right? And it was just a series of telegrams, which I don't do telegrams, so that became challenging. But really kind of what drove me into it is I like a good challenge. I like, I'm an achiever. I love checking the boxes, and you give me a list of things I got to do every day, man, let me at it. And I'm pretty good at forming habits, and habits are formed by repeating over time, right? And so you're going to do something for 62 days. That's a pretty good way of forming habits. And then on a side note, that this thing kind of came in at the tail end of a I'm going to say my loving wife challenged me that I could lose some weight. And
nice.
so, and so the idea of no alcohol, no sugar, exercising multiple times a day is like, yeah, that's a good way to kind of chime on this. So those were all some reasons why the thing was attractive. Once you got into it, you started really realizing it was hard, right? The alcohol
Very
piece.
hard.
The alcohol piece I thought might be hard. It wasn't. The sugar to me was the hardest because that stuff is in everything. The exercise piece, quite honestly, going into it at the time I was doing the Monterey thing, I was, quite the eating was the hardest because I was in hotels and eating out a lot. And so that became very challenging. But because of my schedule, going in, I didn't think I was going to be able to commit to the 245. So I did, I did the 145 every day. But I found myself as I got into it, I kind of felt easier. That's kind of easy. And so I found myself, even though I didn't originally commit to that, I found myself doing an extra, going for a walk in the afternoon,
Wow.
doing stuff. So yeah, I think the idea that you can, reset your mind. You can, mind over matter. I think the program is really reinforces that. And then if you can find yourself that you can get your mind over your body on simple things about what you eat and stuff, then it becomes a very powerful platform to go to more important things, such as how you should be living your life according to how Jesus planned for it.
So cool. When we talk about this, what you're both talking about is you got the physical alongside the spiritual, and we're exercising authority over the body. What we talk about that as being kind of exercising the anti-sin muscle without having a sin interaction. In other words, you're saying no to alcohol is not a sin, particularly if you have the faith to drink it or you're not doing it excessively. It's not a sin. It's not a sin to eat sugars. It's not a it's not a sin to not work out, right? But you're doing these things that position your body to kind of scream at you and say, I don't want to do this, or I want to do this, in the mind taking authority. Have either of you experienced how that transfers to when you have a sin moment and you have more discipline or control over what your body wants to do in a sin moment?
So I think really what it does is it tells you that you can.
Yes. Say more about that. What is that? How are you
Well,
seeing that?
you start with the whole I can, I'm strong, I can do this. But then what you learn is that it's such a challenge. The 100x life challenge itself is such a challenge that you get to that point where you're like, I can't do this, but I can because I know I have God behind me, like cheering me on. Like, you can do this. And so it becomes a spiritual can
Wow.
ability to do something. And so when you're faced with that sin, you've already gone through the process of denying yourself, of changing the mindset or saying no to the body. So it does become easier. I think, the second time we did it first year was kind of little haphazard, but second year of doing no alcohol, no sugar, it was like suddenly that was not that big of a deal. Whereas I went into it
Is that
thinking that
because
was
you
gonna be
you
really
grew you
hard.
kind of grew a muscle regarding that? Like, how would
Absolutely,
you?
yeah. I'm like Ron, I had to up my challenge. I didn't commit to a whole lot in the very beginning this past year in 2025 because 2024 was tough. About a week into it, I'm like, okay, I got to stretch because I'm not being stretched. And that's the entire goal of this is I have to get to the point where my body wants to say no and I have to tell it yes.
I was going to say, I think another thing too is you learn to put yourself in a position to succeed. So when we did it the first year, clear out you clear out all the sugar out of the house, for example. You find
Right.
out all the products and the ingredients that don't have added sugar, and you start getting used to those. And then once the challenge stopped, it was real easy just to continue. Sure, did sugar come back in a bit? Yeah, but did it come back? It may have been here, and then it came back in here, and so it just became
100%.
part of a normal habit going forward. And I think that is a good thing too in terms of some of the commands of Jesus. Don't put yourself in a position that you're going to be tempted to begin with. Let's go the lust route. There's lots of places and situations that you could put yourself into where you would be tempted. So don't even put yourself into those positions.
So amazing because it becomes so practical. You're doing this thing that's just exercise, just eating right. And then all of a sudden it becomes completely applicable to your spiritual experience. I just love that. And I don't know if you guys know about this new research coming on about the MACC part of the brain. Let me see if I can pronounce it. Anterior mid cingulate cortex, which is a part of the frontal lobe. And it is the anti-sin part of the brain. So what we've discovered is if you do things that body doesn't want to do, if you do something the body wants to do or wants to do and you say no, as long as the body's complaining along the way, this part of the brain actually enlarges. And as you do absolute comfort and you just give in to everything your body says, this part of the brain shrinks very rapidly. And they're just starting to research it, but definitely has something to do with self-control. Of course, one of the most overlooked fruits of the spirit, self-control, actually built into our biology. I love this. Let's move to how you guys as a couple are interacting with this. Is there some advantages to do it as a couple? Did you see any kind of interaction or discussion that was valuable? How would you describe that? Cathy, let's go with you first.
Yes, definitely. And this is really, for me, this was what a really big area, along with how I told Ron, I've been waiting forever for you to say this or to get to this point. I had been longing for a little bit more spiritual conversation, maybe a little bit deeper. Having the habit of 100x of the journaling, we just created the habit of in the morning, go into the den, turn on the fire, and doing it together, which was very different. I typically would prefer to go into a room, close the door, have silence, be by myself. But this was an entirely new way of being together, but also being with the Trinity. So having that, and then we found some music that sort of helped also bring spirit in. So to have this mood in a way set, and then to have conversation of, oh, this is what I'm thinking about this, or how do you define that? Just throwing out questions. To have those discussions was so rich. And then we got on the same page, had similar language. So later in the day, after my deliberativeness would, come up with something else, we could revisit it and just be right back on the same page. So I just felt like it drew us closer. It gave us different language. It kind of kept us on the same spiritual path.
Wow, it sounds like an amazing way to connect, and it's almost, and I don't know if I knew that about you guys. Like for me, it's really hard for me to be with other people while I'm journaling because typically I'll start calling it audible, right? Or I'll start singing, or I'm just trying to go with whatever you said. We put music on to invite the spirit. I think the way I read that is you put on music so that you can actually focus on the spirit, and that's the challenge I have. But wow, this is a mind blower. So you guys are actually doing this together. You're sitting, and I can picture it because I've been in your den. You got the fire going, and you're just kind of got the music on. I can see the whole thing. Ron, how does that work for you in your mind when that's happening? Is it is
Well, I'm
it
just
is it
sitting there listening to.
distraction? Was it?
Well, I'm listening to Kathy, and she just so beautifully and nicely, described me being a distraction.
Well, either that or it's what she needs to actually be focused. But how did that work for you together? Did you love it?
No, I thought it was great. I thought it was lovely. And what's interesting is technically we weren't doing yet. We were both doing the 100x life concurrently, right? She was doing it with a group of ladies. I was actually walking through with a group of family members. It was common. We chose to align our morning time together. It was nice. I enjoyed it. And Kathy's right. That's something that we've been married 35 years. We never had quiet time together, right? It was always something that we did separately. It was just a nice new routine.
You got me wondering if I could get Nancy to try that with me and what that would look like.
It's a shift, and there were many days that I actually didn't get to the journaling, and I had to shift my mindset, because initially that would read to me, I would get a little bit irritated because I have something I'm supposed to be doing that I'm not doing because I'm being distracted. But I had to realize that, wow, this is such incredibly precious moments to have these discussions and have this time with Ron that we haven't normally taken. Let's take the mind down that route as opposed to an irritability because I didn't check the box of finishing my journaling. Right?
That's so cool. I love that you're shifting your mindset to actually make that intimacy in both directions, with Ron, with the Trinity. It's so powerful. It's so cool. I think that this is going to be, it's inspiring for me. I think it's going to be inspiring for other couples who are doing the challenge together. So you guys did it together. And then you're also having this discussion, maybe even the beginning of the day, but maybe even at the end of the day. How do you feel like thinking of words of Jesus and putting them into practice? How does doing it together impact that ability, or does it? Ron, what would you say?
I mean, you and I had this conversation. I think after this year's challenge, is, I was kind of nerdy. I created a spreadsheet of, kind of where I ranked myself on progress on all the words. And yeah, there's some words of Jesus I think I'm doing really well at in replicating, reproducing, and there's some that's like, boy, not so. And so the question was, I think I posed to you is, should I be working on the ones that I'm not very good at, or should I be maximizing the ones that I'm really good at? I think your answer was yes.
Sounds like me.
In that, yeah, I recognize, I think where we are on in this scale, I guess, following Jesus' words, it's independent. We are each at different places with different words and stuff. And so I think that there is an aspect of recognizing that, right? And so that's not something that we can necessarily do together. We can do it concurrently. And then I think it's just kind of understanding where each of us are and kind of things we're good at and things we're not good at, or things we're aware of, and maybe we have some blind spots, and just being, loving partners and being encouragers, and being able to point things out perhaps that if we're going astray.
It really is true. We're doing life together as a couple. And one of the things about couples that marriage that's hard is you see the person exactly how they are. You can't hide a thing, really. And then it's like, okay, well, am I going to accept this person even though they need to grow in this area or they haven't accomplished that? And when I say this gets triggered, all the little things about marriage. And then so what I hear you saying, Ron, is that this actually opens up the discussion to actually to be on the same page with some of these things more often than not. Does that sound right?
Yeah, I think beyond a page, but probably for me more so of the awareness, in
Yeah.
terms of where we are on different aspects, right? And understanding that, accepting that, and supporting change, supporting improvement, um, and celebrating, how do I want to articulate? Celebrating, wins, or celebrating excellence. Kathy, I love how you do this.
I mean, that's amazing if you do that, if you can say that to your spouse. It's so funny when we think about marriage, it's the 20% that bugs the heck out of us. 80% is pretty good. And then 20% is like, get your stuff together, like focusing on the 80% that's right and actually doing an audible. I love that. Kathy, what was your experience in doing this with Ron, and how did it grow you?
I think I have to just come back to the fact that just having that time together, that to me was the gem, really.
That's the precious aspect of doing the challenge, was actually having that time in the morning.
That's right. That's really right. And what I find now is that, again, we have a similar language. And when we are up against something, we can either hold each other accountable with that language, or, be talking about, this is what I'm challenged with right now, or I'm trying really hard not to judge or condemn or whatever. And, you have those words of Jesus that are more upfront and they're more part of the discussion. And the only way to really integrate these words into our daily life is by practice. Like, we
Mm.
can know the words, but until we're acting on them, we're never going to integrate them. So to have someone beside you who's also trying to do that is
The vocabulary, you mentioned the vocabulary. I think that's incredible. With any team, and marriage is no different. There's cohesive team, and then there's clarity of mission. When you're speaking the same vocabulary and you're going in the same direction, you're really creating a clarity of mission as a couple. It really helps to go in the same direction. It helps, cohesive team works a lot better if there's clarity of mission. Sounds that's kind of where it really helped you synchronize with.
I think so. I think so. And I think we're definitely moving in that direction. This has been a great launching pad for what potentially could be next for us.
Yeah.
No idea what it is. Don't ask. I have no idea.
I mean, you guys just went through a season where you have parents that are passing away. How does that impact? Like, that's disruptive to life. So thinking about all this vocabulary and kind of being on the same track, then you go through this very difficult thing. Every single person, based on Gallup survey, goes through two crazy life changing, altering experiences a decade, and so you guys had together separate parents. How does the vocabulary and tracking together and that work? Does it dovetail? Does it leverage the difficult season? Did you experience that in any way? Ron, how about you first?
Well, let's just go to the words of Jesus, and if you go through all these, if you want to distill them down, it's love, right? Love is
Wow.
the most powerful driver of all of those, and so now if you have the words of Jesus and they're in your heart and they're in your mind, and you're trying to replicate them, then you're replicating love, and I would say use the example of losing both of our parents. We lost both of our mothers within 5 weeks, and there was illnesses beforehand and challenges in terms of caregiving and whatnot. We both have large families, so there's lots of opinions involved, and we just found ourselves navigating this with love. That
Wow.
was the most important thing, and yeah, I think that was very helpful and instrumental in getting through this.
Wow. Kathy, your perspective on that. That's amazing.
Yeah, actually, I think Ron and I have talked about this and the fact that one of the things that really came out of for me that came out of master's program for women, but has been very much accentuated by going through the 100x life is this idea of bringing spirit into soul. And it looks like love and being able to see people as image bearers. It puts everyone on the same playing field. It provides so much grace and so much mercy, and it all comes out as love. It has to. And you look at how Jesus interacted with people, and it was always, he was present, he listened, he figured out what their need was and usually met it, and then they were willing to listen to the gospel. And I just think that we have found that has happened. As you love people,
As you went through that situation.
they become more tolerant, not tolerant, but more open because they trust you more and you have a little bit more integrity. And so that love just overrides all. And I think that is the basis of 100x life.
That's so beautiful, and I'm glad you shared that, and I got to hear that. The behaviors of love that we've many times talked about being the words of Jesus. If we can put those into practice, we're actually living the behaviors of love. And then something you said I think is really powerful, and I know Ron has been impacted by this too because we've talked about it. Is that seeing people as image bearers? So often we, particularly I think family members, we see them as obstacles or challenges rather than people. And then you can up your game even more by saying image bearer. And then the thought that crosses my mind when you started talking about Jesus is he's not just looking at everyone as an image bearer. He's also saying, yeah, and you're worth dying for, and you're worth dying for, and you're worth dying for. Like even the worst person that presents themselves, well, yeah, you're worth dying for. I love that perspective, and I can totally see how that got you through the season. Do you feel like family members could feel that? Did you have any sense, Ron, that any of them could actually feel that that was happening?
Yeah, I do. I think Kathy, I call her the bug catcher. You know those lights that tracks all the bugs.
Yes,
Right?
yes.
Kathy walks in. She walks in the room with her family, and that's the image I see of her is, and I think it's just kind of her love that goes before her.
Is that kind of like let your light shine?
There you go.
I like a little
Okay.
bug light catcher.
A bug like catcher, yeah. Like I'm trying to get there. I just think I just hear this.
Yeah, yeah, right. Gotcha.
But I think what you mean by is that people are attracted to her as a light.
Yeah,
That's
we
not that they
we're
get
gonna
killed in the process.
yeah we're gonna get off this call, and she's gonna go. You called me a a bug
No,
zapper.
actually, if I can be totally honest, in
Please.
preparing for this, I was going through my journaling, and there is one spot where I literally was writing from the spirit saying, "You're a little bug light." And and so it just occurred to me that we had that conversation. It must have been that same day, and I must have just like brought that into my journaling. So that's kind of
That is
funny.
so crazy. I love that. That's beautiful. Okay, so last question. There's people who are listening to this, and maybe some couples, or maybe there's one member of a team, a marriage team. Why do you want it? Is there an advantage? I think you're talking about all sorts of advantages to do it together, but what would you be recommending to someone who's considering to do 100x life and it's a possible that they could do it as a couple? What are the advantages there, Kathy? You lead.
Well, there's the obvious ones of just general support. I honestly cannot imagine trying to do this myself if Ron is sitting over there eating chocolate chip cookies or ice cream or whatever. And
Right.
not that he would have lord it over me, that's not his character, but it just would make things a lot more challenging, which maybe someone needs that level of challenge, I don't know. But just to have that shared experience, I mean, it just grows intimacy. Why would you not? It just brings you together.
So cool. Ron, how about you?
Yeah, I'm just going to double down on the put yourself in a position to succeed in doing this. It's a lot easier if you got someone in the same household that's going along the ride with you.
Totally. You guys brought something to my attention that I don't think I've ever even considered. I'm going to talk to Nancy like, hey, could we journal together during this experience? I don't know. I know she's leading some women doing a word a week. Not sure she's going to do the 62-day challenge. Let's see if she does. Guys, thank you so much. It's so good to be with you per usual. Thank you for being transparent and open with us. And 100X Lifers, thanks for being here and thanks for listening and have a great week.
Thanks, Rob. Thanks for
Thanks,
having
Rob.
us.
If you believe in the 100X Life movement, please follow and invite a friend by sharing this podcast. The 100X Life movement could also be found on Instagram and Facebook and also at 100xlife.com. The 100X Life podcast was produced by Jenna D of Jenna D Services with music by Ryan Ellis.
Once was lost, but you found me here. And your fire burns inside, it will not disappear. Because the Spirit